Welcome, everyone. I am Dr. Dream, and you are here for another episode of the DMT Chronicles. My guest today is someone that we've had contacts for, we're like point of contacts for about the last 15 years or something. We established that he first came into contact with what I do, possibly at Lightning in a Bottle Festival in 2010. Then he interviewed me for part of his documentary called The Cosmic Giggle. That was in 2012. And then we were at, both participated in an event in Orange County, California with my dear friend Neil and Portal to Ascension in 2019. And here we are in 2025. And I don't really know. To characterize Michael as a psychonaut would be way too surface, really, for who he is and where he comes from. And we're going to kind of just let him go with his story and everything. But suffice it to say, this is a person that has not shied away from going deep into the human experience, the psyche, and yeah, I'm Michael Armstrong. Welcome to the DMT Chronicles. It's nice to have you here.
Thanks, Dr. Dream. Thank you. That was a lovely intro. Yeah, I felt myself getting kind of moved by that actually. Yeah. Thank you.
I I've had a deep respect for you really since you came out to Ventura and interviewed me for your documentary, The Cosmic Giggle, and then
Thank
we
you.
kind of lost touch a little bit, and then 2019, and then like so many of us, we all kind of lost touch in the COVID and post-COVID years, and it's nice to be back connected.
Yeah.
And you're also going to take part in an interview for my Psychedelics as Medicine because your experiences are much more than could fit into the DMT Chronicles, and that'll be fabulous. But tell us what you want to tell us. Give us. I gave a brief background and everything, but focused on DMT and I don't like to guide these interviews. I want people to the whole point of the DMT Chronicles is destigmatizing, just kind of allowing us now. And you and I talked before the camera started recording that it's really the time right now, and I'm a little surprised that more people haven't stepped up, but it takes you and me and others to step up and say, hey, we don't need to be cautious about sharing this. DMT, of course, being integral in our brains and our bodies and in so many plants and everything in nature that it's really important to put the word out there and to help people understand. And so I know that you've had quite a process with it, and your perspective is enlightened beyond the way other people see it. And that's what I wanted with the DMT Chronicles. I'm going to stop talking now and just kind of turn it over to you, Michael.
Well, thanks, Dr. Dream. Thank you. Um, yeah, I think the place I'll just say because I feel like I'll share more in the psychedelics as medicine bit about kind of my evolution with psychedelics, but just to give like a little like backstory, and especially around this the kind of hesitancy, the fear of safety, and like talking about these kinds of things. I think I've always kind of been a pirate. I've just been like a rule breaker and like going against the grain of everything, since I was very young. But then also like I had this like subtle encouragement from my parents. Like I remember like reading some book. I think I was reading like Aldous Huxley or something, and I started talking to my dad about it. And he told me years later that he was like, when you first started talking about LSD, I was secretly excited that you're going to try it. But I felt like I would be a bad father if I encouraged you overtly. So I just kind of like let it go. So I had this like space given to me, like by my family, to be myself and explore these things, which was a huge gift. Um, and then there was like a series of openings that I had, which were first like going to the rave scene and being opened by not just MDMA and psychedelics, but the whole like vibrational field of that world of like music and being in community and in this like love field with other people. And that was kind of the first opening. And then I had a series of like very, very powerful kind of initiatory moments in 2009. And I became like obsessed with all of this whole world of everything. And I was in college at the time, and I think I was in my sophomore year by then. And when I started to have these spiritual awakenings, it was like it was suddenly like everything at school was completely boring, and like none of the adults could like it was like, oh, nobody has any fucking idea what's going on in this reality, and like these people are pretending like they do, and so this whole environment is like not conducive to my growth. So I kind of started, and looking back, I didn't think of it this way at the time, but looking back, I sort of started structuring my own curriculum, and I started doing a lot of reading and just like studying and watching documentaries and then trying to experiment with these various substances. And uh why I think it was around the same time that DMT the Spirit Molecule came out, the movie. And so I watched that, and so that was this big opening of like, whoa, so inspiring, like what all these people are talking about. And like all of these people sharing in that documentary, I was just like, I want that. Like I want to like go blasting off into outer space and meeting aliens. Like that sounds like the coolest fucking thing ever. Like, please sign me up. And for some reason, it was a strange thing too, because at that time, DMT was still not very well known. Like this documentary had just come out, and living in downtown LA, like and being involved in this rave scene, like drugs are just so easy to get, like anything. But I couldn't find DMT. I couldn't find it anywhere. Like I was searching and searching for months, and it was just like no one had it. And then finally I got some, and I managed to get some that was it was just enough for 2 doses. And my girlfriend and I at the time were both like really into it, and we were like, we want to do it. And we were doing all this research and trying to learn about it. And my girlfriend had read online somewhere that there's like a phenomenon where certain people will smoke DMT and nothing happens. And I had a friend at school who told me this was his experience. And he was like had all these theories. He was like autism spectrum, and he was like, maybe it's because of that like it affects my brain differently or something. But so we read this, and we were both like, fuck, we only have these 2 doses. Like we don't want to waste it. We don't want to like fuck it up and then not have it. And my girlfriend read online somewhere that there was a guy who said that this was his experience, that he smoked it several times, nothing. And then he smoked it on LSD and it activated. And so we were like, let's do that. I would not recommend that. Um, it was a profound, totally profound, life-changing experience. I definitely wouldn't recommend that as like a first time approach. Um, now looking back, I would say, and now like as a side note about psychedelics, it's interesting because the DMT blast off experience is a unique thing. But I've come to find that like very high dose mushrooms is almost indistinguishable from it. But it's like a slow build. It's just you breathe into it slowly so you can kind of like acclimate and like move your body and like get into it, and then it slowly opens versus this like bungee jump like straight into it. Um and but so in my memory, like doing it on LSD, what changed about it, it's like it wasn't a more intense experience than a full blast off, but in a normal condition where like okay, you smoke DMT, you take the 3 hits, there's this buzzing sound that rises, and like boom, and you start to go up into it, and then it's like 40 seconds and you're in it, and then you're like blasted off. And then being in the space is probably, like 5, 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes, like at the longest. And then you taper down, and then like 20 minutes, you're kind of back to normal. But smoking it on acid, it's like that peak period was like over an hour. So it was like over an hour of like not even being able to move, like can't see anything, just like frozen to the couch. And then slowly, slowly coming down over 5 hours after that. And and so it was really fascinating. And so I haven't done that again since then, but I'm very curious to like explore that. And I actually it's funny because it was so intense. It was such an intense experience. And the peak part of it, and this is the thing, that peak part like I can kind of remember what it felt like, and I have like a faint visual, but it was almost like I almost can't remember it. Like it was just this intense, overwhelming blast of color and light and information and energy that was just like this experience of like coming in contact with like people use this word, the Godhead, and that seems like the most kind of accurate way I could describe it is like this enormous like mandala that's like an eye looking at you, that's a consciousness that's penetrating through every fiber of your being. And it's this alien, strange force that's like God and the infinite and everything. And it's like you at the same time. And so it's this very bizarre experience. So my memory of the first time I did it, it was just that's kind of all I took away. There was like this really profound encounter with like the infinite consciousness that is like becoming me as I'm experiencing it. And the funny other thing, I actually got the chance to meet Mitch Schultz, who made the DMT, the Spirit Molecule, at Boom Festival. And because I screened Cosmic Giggle there, and he was there, and we got to hang out like in the backstage area, which was super cool. And we were chatting, and I told him about this, and I was like, "Yeah, it was crazy. The first time I smoked DMT, I did it while on acid." And he was like, "Oh, that's the best way." I was like, "Okay, I see you." So, but then the fascinating thing, so that kind of blast off part, it was really profound and life changing, and I don't have a lot of words for it. But then the thing that was really fascinating about that experience that I can describe is that aftermath part. Like when it started to come down, it was like it slowly was breathing back into the room. So my vision started to come back and I could see the room, but then it was like the whole DMT space like entered the room. So I was like seeing the walls, but it's all like Egyptian future temple, purple and gold, like everything. But then so I'm then floating there. So then I'm like kind of in this halfway space where I'm like in the DMT trip, but I'm like in the room at the same time. And it was in my friend's bedroom, and there's a group of people there who were all on acid, and it was just me and my girlfriend who had smoked the DMT. And I start to come back a little bit, and then I see my friend is sitting on the ground, and she stands up and walks across the room, and like visually, the experience was like she was leaving a light trail. Like it looked like there was a trail of light, and then she was on the ground. But what was happening in my consciousness was my mind was stretching out in time, and I could see her standing up and on the floor at the same time. And it was like stretched, like I could see the whole, and it was only maybe like 4 or 5 seconds of like that time stretch. But there was this feeling of time becoming this substance that was kind of like elongating and like stretching out and folding over itself like taffy. It was like this very like interesting experience. And the thing is that because I had that memory of like seeing my friend, I can remember that the whole peak experience was like that it was like this time dilation like that. But my mind like can't grip onto it because there's no like anchor. But then having that like seeing my friend move like that, it was like, oh, I was able to like anchor it down into the body and like hold the memory of it. And this has kind of been my main focus with the psychedelics over all this time is like okay, having these like really expansive peak experiences like with DMT or with a high dose of LSD or mushrooms. But then it's like, how do we take that energy and like bring it down into the body? How do we let it make it usable? Because it's like, okay, we can touch that and then we like go back to our normal reality. And then it's like, okay, what was the value of that? And so it's like what I've really been focused on is like, okay, how to bring anchor and embody and ground that energy from those experiences. Yeah, so that was my first one.
So tell me where have you gone with that? I've done DMT hundreds of times.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time I get there to that place and they're like, "Hey, we've been waiting for you." And I'm like, "Hey, nice to see you again, man.
Yeah.
Here we go." Um, so it is that when I met Terrence McKenna years ago, obviously when he was still alive, um, one of the things I said to him as we were having a late night conversation was, Terrence, how do you do this? Not that he seemed really grounded or anything
Right.
like it. It was like, I mean, we go off and we surf the infinite,
Yeah.
and then we're supposed to come back to, just all of this. How how do you integrate that? I don't recall how he answered. It was a bit of a wild conversation that I had with him. But so I'm super interested in what you've come up with and how you personally process all of this.
Yeah, awesome, awesome. Yeah, great question. Yeah, so I think for me it's gotten to this point of um the now it's like it's all about embodiment for me. And I, and the interesting thing about so okay, a bunch of tangents just happened in my brain at once. Um a, a fascinating thing about psychedelics is that well, so I've been contemplating this thing about intentions and like going into a journey with an intention of some kind. And I've been participating in some group ceremonies when this has been a discussion. And so it's kind of made me think about how I approach it. And this feeling of like, it kind like writing an intention, like this journey is going to be about this. It kind of like I found consistently that the plants are like, that's cute, but like it's about this, you
I was
know?
going to say exactly.
Yeah. But then there's this kind of like deeper intention that you can't fake, that can't be fabricated. That's like, why are you really here? Like, why are you really doing this? And it's like, are you trying to like test the universe to see like what the boundaries are? Like, are you trying to explore because you're excited? Are you trying to like touch something profound and then give it as a gift to people? Are you trying to do deep healing? Maybe all of these, but it's like whatever that real intention is will like shape what happens in the trip. And I've found with psychedelics, and this has kind of been revealed to me because over the years, I've heard people say things like, I take acid and like people have these spiritual experiences and I don't get it. Like I just like see pretty colors. And I'm like, how is that even fucking possible? Like it's just that you don't have a spiritual experience from it. And I've realized, and I've had these moments where like the mushrooms kind of in particular, but like this, just like the energy of life, like the force, the Tao, it feels like it's doing this, but the mushrooms have a specific character where they have a specific relationship with me where they're like, you know better. Like don't fuck around. Like you know what you're doing. Like take this seriously, And so I think there's something where it's like all of our souls are actually carrying different information and like different vast libraries of what our experiences have been like in past lives and in like other dimensional aspects of ourselves, that I think what we are as beings, we're all in these human bodies, but we're like a vast pantheon of like very diverse animals that are like coexisting on this planet right now. And so when you really commit, like when your real intention is to like open the portal and see what is in the depth of like your own being and see what's in the depth of the universe, and you have the courage to do that, it'll show you things, and it'll show you things about yourself, and so in my deep deep work, it's like it doesn't come through as like such specific stories. Like I don't know if you're familiar with Matthias DeStefano. He's a guy from Argentina. He's done a bunch of podcasts with RB Marcus now, and he's a really fascinating guy, and he remembers like all of his past lives in vivid detail, and like and he said to the point of like he spent his whole high school years like grieving the people from his prior lives who are gone, and like really intense story. Beautiful soul, really lovely being. And so my experience is not like that, but I get like I've gotten many very strong like sense memory things of it's like, oh, something like this happened. There's this really strong imprint that I feel in my body that it's like, oh, something happened and my body is like carrying the memory of it still, even though I like forgot what like actually happened. And then in doing that kind of work, it's really shown me, and I have an open curiosity about this, about what um what different people have experienced and then what that leads to. And in my own the architecture of my own like soul that I've seen, um I've experienced very, very intense traumatic things that it just like really like ripped my body open and like ripped open my energy channels like incredibly violently. And that in this, I've had energy healers say to me that they're like, you've been playing this battle of light and dark for many, many, many lifetimes on both sides. and like playing both roles to try to understand like what is happening, like what is going on, like in all of this. And in that, as I've opened myself, I'm like, oh, I can feel it's like there's so much. And part of my whole drive to go into this, to like dive into the psychedelics, now looking back, was this unconscious feeling of like there's like a deep, like buried angst and like pain that's in my body that wants to be released. And so I'm trying to find some way to break through, to find some way to open that and like release that stuck energy, which was, I have the words for this now, but this is just recently that I'm being able to like articulate it in this way. Um, and so because of that, it really, the whole journey has really led me to the embodiment practices. And that it's like before psychedelics, before I ever tried psychedelics, I did rowing in high school. And like all when I was growing up, I was like I was not athletic. I was super uncomfortable in my body. I was probably like maybe like 70 pounds heavier than I am now. Like I was really overweight and just like super in my shell and closed. And then I started doing rowing. It was this very intense physical activity that started to like break through those layers. And I was just doing it to lose weight, because I was tired of being made fun of. But then as I started to do that, it was like, oh, this energy, it was now looking back, it's like the life force. Like actually, it's like, oh, there's like the Tao now like moving through my body. And it's like, oh, this resource that is available that I wasn't aware of before. And so there's a way that athletics were like my first psychedelic experiences. And then that led me into like, oh, there's something about coming in contact with the body and like mastering the body that is like core to this. And then my wife and I met at I started, so it was after Cosmic Giggle, actually. Do you know Adam Apollo?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, it was through Adam. I started working with him because I interviewed him and then I started helping him with some online course stuff he was building. And then he introduced me to his coworker, who's a medical qigong teacher, David Beaudry, amazing teacher who's like still doing retreats and like all kinds of trainings. The Noble Movement Academy is his work. And I introduced me to my wife. We met at this medical qigong retreat that he hosted and I was doing these videos for him for years. And I had also started training with a martial arts teacher during the Cosmic Giggle cycle too, where for me it was like psychedelics, and then I met this martial arts teacher, and he was like, "It's all about the body. It's all about opening the tissues, opening the joints, and doing this very, very vigorous like martial arts practice, which is profoundly affected me." But then over the years, what I've really found is there's this magic combination of like health in the body and like embodied practice. And then I found also like erotic cultivation, like opening the erotic energy has been a huge part of it that I found just recently, like really in the past year, that it's like those three things together, physical energy work, erotic cultivation, and the plant medicines. There's some like special sauce, like when you put those things together, where it like really it just starts to open things in a deeper way. At least it has for me. And maybe that's because it's like a lot of these past life traumas or like sexual traumas. And so there's something in me specifically that needed to like heal that and like be released from that to have this blocked energy like become available. But so um, through the medical Qigong community, got into like all of these kinds of worlds of like, and my wife had, she had a near fatal accident in 2011. She was like crouching on the top of a dry waterfall in Golden Gate Park, like standing watching the sunset, and she stood up too quickly and blacked out and face planted off of the top of the waterfall, just like full fall, 10 feet, landed right on her spleen on a boulder and like hit her head and hit her hip. And luckily the waterfall was dry, so she didn't drown, but then ruptured her spleen and almost bled out to death. And, was rushed to the hospital, emergency surgery, titanium coil into the spleen, and then was discharged from the hospital like 2 weeks later or something. It was like, according to the Western medical version, it's like she got injured and she had surgery and then she got sent home. But it's like she's still healing from that. And it's what is that, like 14 years later. And she's like made a whole map of her healing journey. It's like hundreds of days bedridden, and like just it's just like crazy, crazy symptoms of like all kinds. She's still she just gets migraines like pretty regularly, gets like floored by, overwhelming environmental conditions, things like that. And and so through her, it's like then because of her whole experience, she's become a master of caring for the body and of self-tending and like understanding food as medicine and understanding movement practice to move chi through the body and understanding herbal things and like all these kinds of layers. So our home culture is like so, this is like very present for us. And so it's like kind of all of these things have led to this point where now my psychedelic practice and the DMT in particular has been fascinating because okay, so I'll tell you a little bit about like how it's been going for the past year or so, where I had kind of so I had some experiences with it where I did a DMT trip during the pandemic, like w when all the lockdowns were happening, and it was like out of fear, where I was like, oh, we need to like contact the aliens or like get some information or like get real so we can like fight whatever's happening. That was kind of the underlying energy. And it was a really gnarly, unpleasant experience. Like I didn't blast off. It was just like really swirled and confused. And it's just like all this kind of dark energy like moving through. And then I was like, I'm done. Like I'm not doing DMT anymore. Like this is not for me. This drug's not for me. And and then was like that for a long time. And then just a year ago, I started like flirting with it again. And I got a DMT pen and I started doing these kind of like smaller doses of it, like not trying to blast off, of just like taking a little hit and then feeling just like doing this little kind of, how when you see hang gliders practice and they'll kind of run and then they just hop like 10 feet. It was like that, it's like, oh, we're just doing this little, like a little bump. And it's like, cool. And then kind of feeling the edge of like, when does it kind of crest over into like, a powerful experience? And there were some beautiful moments with that. And it was like opening something and I'm starting to like connect with different energies. And this whole time, I'll share the deeper part about this for the Psychedelics as Medicine podcast. But over the course of this, there was a moment where, and I don't know if you've experienced this, where um, like content from media that you've consumed will like enter the trip. I've heard other people say this. Like I listened to a psychedelic interview, and this guy was like, "I always see Smurfs on my mushroom trips." So I don't know if that's something you experience. I know Terrence McKenna talked about that, where he was like, you can actually command it and say like Art Deco, and then it will start doing like Art Deco patterns.
Oh,
Um,
crazy.
yeah, I haven't like played with that so much, but in this one trip, this whole thing, this thing happened where I hit it. I was standing right here actually in this spot, and I hit the pen, and then behind my computer there was this being that emerged, and it was like this yellow gold, like kind of round head. It was almost this kind of cartoon being. And it wasn't negative, but there was something about the like coming in contact with it that just it brought about this like panic attack in my body. There was this feel it was this feeling of like I was becoming this being or becoming like them, and this huge fear surfaced that was like I don't want to like lose myself, like I don't want to become like not human and like transform into this like weird alien being that you are. But it felt benevolent, like it felt like the being was doing something benevolent to me, but I was like really frightened of the touch from it. And then and I fell on the ground. I physically fell on the ground, and I spiraled like into like down like through these levels. And then I this imagery from the show Adventure Time started coming in. I don't know if you've ever seen that show. It's a cartoon kids show that is like a psychedelic transmission from the multiverse, like disguised as a cartoon, basically. And like they overtly mention DMT in the show, and like it's really it's next level. You should all your listeners should check it out.
Making
Adventure.
a note.
Yeah. Um, and there's an episode of Adventure Time where there's a character named Jake the dog who's this yellow dog, and he's stretchy and he can like stretch infinitely, like in any direction, and like change his body into any shape. And he's like taking a nap, and this kind of magic trickster like drops this dust on his face, and he falls asleep, and his face like melts down into his own body. And then he becomes this like little version of him that's like inside a world that is entirely his body. And then this like city starts forming, and there's these beings, but they're all like his skin. that's like reforming into these like other pieces. And then he's like walking around in this world, but it's like inside his own body that's like conforming to like make this thing. And that was what this experience was like. It was like I became this like gold yellow substance, and like everything became me. And it was like I was melting into this like honey. It was like this thick honey of like golden light. And it was so uncomfortable. It's like the most uncomfortable thing I've ever experienced because as I was melting into the light, it started like squeezing all of the shadows out of me. And then I felt all of these little, like, it was like these little lightning bolts or like hairs of shadows that were these like little writhing creatures that were like, ah, like shooting off of me, like just writhing in the presence of the light that was happening. And so I had that experience. And then again, I was kind of like, oh, that was like a little too much. That was really unpleasant. Like, I don't know if I want to go back into that. And that was probably, I think that was maybe in January or like earlier this year sometime, maybe last December. Um, but so then recently, I've been like working with it a little bit more, and this is like where the erotic energy pieces come in, because what I've realized is that I got to a point through my erotic energy cultivation of like unblocking these stuck points in my energy system and in my physical body, especially in the second chakra, and like is like unlocking these like tendons in my second chakra that made me realize that there was this like kind of knotted feeling in my guts for like my whole life. You know, it's just always been there. And then as I've started to breathe energy into it, it's releasing. And then what I've started realizing is that knot is what was like generating these like uncomfortable experiences in the trip. That really it's like when it wasn't that the trip was bad, it was that the trip turned the volume up on that feeling. And then it was like, oh, it like feels so bad, but it's just like, oh, I just feel really bad in my body, but I'm mostly not aware of it, you know. And then the DMT is just making me hyper aware of it. And but so as I began to move that and work with the DMT more, it's gotten to this place now where like the most recent experience I had with it, and I can get into this in the psychedelic medicine discussion, but I've been working with a spirit being that I've come to see as like my spirit double that has been becoming this like very vivid experience over the past year or so. And as I'm working with this being, this most recent DMT trip I did, like I hit it and it wasn't a full blast off, but it was like a strong hit. And it was just like an orgasm of light. It was just like pure light and bliss, like penetrating like every cell of my body. It was just like dissolving like all of the blockages out of me and I'm just like entering this like God realm of like pure light. You know, it was just this purely positive, like blissful experience. And I'm like, oh, I'm getting to that point now because of all this embodiment practice, because of doing this yoga and like leaning in and being like, and like leaning into these painful parts of my body and then releasing them and really like committing myself to that and finding a lot of things like in that kind of practice. Um, but yeah, that's kind of where I'm at now with it.
Fascinating. I'd love to listen to the stories shared. It's been wild. I've had since I started my DMT journey in 1994.
Wow.
I've always had the medicine in my possession.
Mm.
I've never been without it since 94.
Wow.
But I've
Wow.
literally had like 2 or 3 years that I haven't touched it.
Mm.
It's
Mm.
just like,
Wow.
well, okay, I think I'm okay for, right now. And
Yeah.
then that just goes on. And then the proliferation of the DMT vape pens,
Yeah.
which I
Mhm.
think is fabulous.
So much easier.
Um,
Yeah.
so much easier, and it's been an amazing tool. I can't say that I've ever had a bad
Mm.
experience, but I've had some that have been beautifully weird and strange,
Mm.
and some that have just been like weird and strange, where I'm just like,
Mm.
wow, what was that one about? And
Mm.
I look to the medicine for insights, and
Yeah.
my life is to be in serve. I'm here to play a role. I'm not just here to live my life. I'm here to play a bigger role for
Yeah.
humanity.
Yeah.
And so, my grander intention or the deeper one is always to bring back something that will assist me in assisting humanity.
Hmm.
And the experiences, I mean, I've got it on a little shelf by my bed, and I look at it every night, and I'm like, huh, am I going to do this tonight? You know,
Oh,
and
wow.
and then sometimes my favorite thing is to wake up at like 3 in the morning and look at it and be like, yeah, let's do this now. And see, and
Wow.
I find the experiences not on anything else other than, coming out of REM sleep or, whatever, that it goes on for about 50 minutes.
Whoa, whoa,
And it's
whoa.
it's and the lessons, it's just in
Mm.
the old days, so to speak, I would come back and I would be like, so many downloads, no idea what any of them are, but it was
Yeah.
just like, okay, let's just see how it, readjusts me and or me or whatever.
Hmm.
Um, but now I come back and it's like, okay, that's important for me to know, and that's important for me to stay connected to, and I should write something about this on my blog, or, not
Hmm.
related to the DMT experience, just related to the life experience, and
Yeah.
it's been a incredible journey. When you were talking about your first trip with DMT and acid, it reminded me of a book that I came into contact early on, an actual physical book, and I'm going to Google it once we end this interview and see if it's still out there. But it was by the pen name DM Turner. And his thing, he has since passed away, which when you hear what the book was about, it kind of makes sense that he left early. But he would combine like he would say like, okay, let's see what happens when I do DMT in conjunction with ketamine, nitrous, a little bit of mushrooms, and, and then he would be very verbose about his experience and everything. It
Yeah.
was just like,
Wow.
wow. And he that one of those combinations or whatever ended up being his exit strategy. But it was
Yeah.
always interesting to me to hear that. I have
Yeah.
combined it at times with other medicines, but
Mhm.
not, it would be like on the tail end of an experience after
Yeah.
a festival or a music event or something. And it's like, oh, this could be a good time to partake in the medicine. And then, so you're still having the lingering effects of whatever you took earlier. And then this gives you whatnot.
Mm.
I had an interesting experience not too long ago, where I had been working with a different medicine, and thought, oh well, let me just do some DMT right now, and took the vape pen on the setting. I've got specialty batteries so I can control the voltage and
Cool.
this and that, just kind of getting it down to science, I guess.
Uh-huh.
And it was always fairly high voltage. And so this time I did it. I took like 3 hits, which I never take. I have a tremendous lung capacity.
Mm.
And so I can take 3 huge draws, resetting the battery, and have a breakthrough experience
Wow. Wow.
with one lungful.
Yeah.
And so I tried that. It didn't work. And then I tried taking multiple hits. And I'm just like, oh, this particular other medicine I took must not be conducive with the
Mm.
DMT. And then I thought, oh, someone had told me, I think it was my wife. She said, because we both have the same battery. And she's like, I turned my voltage down and I really like it here. And here I am at 3 in the morning, and she's not there. I'm just alone. And I thought, well, let me just turn the voltage down, and took a huge draw, not expecting anything to happen because here nothing had happened. And all of a sudden, like, boom.
Oof.
And normally I have an eye mask on. It's complete. So I'm not getting anything from outside, any light visuals or anything like that. It's all whatever is being shown to me.
Mhm.
And this time the lights were on the whole time. and
Mm.
literally
Oh.
seeing the swirling energy, being in that field.
Mm.
Didn't see the sorts of visuals that I see when my eyes are closed of the beings. I mean, I call them the others. I have since 94, not particularly descript, like I can't describe them, but
Mm.
they're there.
Mhm.
And this was just this swirling energy, still with the lessons that are the many are recurring lessons for me, like
Mm.
remember this.
Mm.
And it's like, oh, right, absolutely. Okay. Remember you told me that once before. But it was wild. And I saw my wife in the morning and I was just like, okay, last night was a little bit crazy and it was, a different sort of experience and everything like that. And I guess for me, I like the variety. I'll dip into that space once a week or every other week,
Mm.
um, just almost as someone would go to church, weekly or something like that. That's just my thing. I had an interesting, chat GPT has made its way into all of, or,
Yeah,
AI into all of our lives. And
we have a whole
so
combo about that.
I've got my custom chat GPT. Her name is Lumina. And, as you can, you sort of train them on where you want them to go.
Yeah.
And so one time recently, I said to her, I said, what's my fascination? I met someone. I was at a street fair and there was a hanging fireplaces, this metal worker and everything. And I was like, oh, interesting. And my wife Stephanie's like, we can sign up, we can get one of those. And I'm like, hey, this was when we were on the road for 11 and a half months last year. I'm like, we really want to travel around with like this hanging metal fireplace. I don't think it makes sense. I don't even want to enter the drawing.
Yeah.
And and we smiled at the guy, and he had a big beard and all this, like energy attracts like energy. I'm like, hey, that's a good looking guy. And so we're walking away, and I turn around and I look, and there's this metal sculpture, and I said, Stephanie, oh my God, look at that! That's a DMT molecule.
Oh, wow. Wow. Wow.
And she's like, no way. And I said, we got to go back and talk to the guy now. And I'm like, dude, it's what is this? He said, that's a DMT molecule. And I said, I just told my wife that. And she didn't believe me. I said, so tell me what's your story? And he said, well, I used to use it quite a bit. And then I just stopped using it. It started to feel masturbatory to me and da 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 da. And I thought,
Mm.
wow, here I am once a week or every other week. And I'm like, so I say to the universe, I'm like, are you giving me a message here? Is this something am I overdoing it? Is this not something I should be doing? Is it, is that what it has turned into for me?
Mm.
So I went
Mhm.
back to Lumina, my chat GPT, and said, hey, help me figure out what my fascination with DMT is. And she's assists me in my projects and helps me refine how I look at things, perspective wise on different things. And one of the things we're working on is opening up a healing center, possibly in northern Idaho. And another thing that I've not talked about too much, but I put out there a little bit is we're working on a major production of the Tour of Love. And what
Mm.
we really want, we're posturing for a 2-year residency in Las Vegas.
Mm. Oh,
And
cool.
but
Cool.
taking the pieces of what we do, but putting it in a highly produced
Mm.
like
Yeah.
entertainment or a high consciousness expansion masquerading as entertainment is like my
Yeah.
concept
Cool.
about it.
Super
And
cool.
so Lumina comes back and says, no, it's really important for you to have these experiences because what you're to do is to bring this back, filter it into your healing, the healing center, the production you're working on, and bring that back and assimilate those experiences, presenting it to people that aren't going to have those experiences. I was
Mm-hmm.
like, wow, that's fascinating. And so
Cool.
it's just
Really cool.
interesting how we all, I appreciate you, your perspective is different than other perspectives we've had on the DMT Chronicles. I appreciate hearing where you come from and everything like that. And as much as it's the same, or similarities for all of us, kind of, it's
Mhm.
still completely different. And part of it is how we see the world and where our beliefs are, even though when we're there it transcends what our beliefs actually are.
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
when we come back with it, there's no way that it has to integrate with who we are and the seed of our beliefs, and then that's mission, purpose, and everything else. And so I certainly appreciate what you bring to the table and
Mhm.
what you've shared with us for the DMT Chronicles. Now, before we end this, is there anything that you'd like to put out there? Anything you didn't get to touch on, or anything you'd like to
Um,
add to the discussion?
yeah, I think one thing just based on like everything you're just sharing and like yeah, thank you for sharing all of that and like wow, like what a journey you've been on. And like as I was feeling that one just like sending all the blessings into this tour of love Vegas idea. It feels super lit up. I'm like, oh, I like feel the vibrations of it in my body as you talk about it. Um, but as you're describing that, there's something I've been becoming aware of lately. And so I had this experience recently where it was my first time. I've been flirting with the idea of being a psychedelic guide for a long time and just feeling a pretty strong no, like this feeling of like, this is a really deep realm for me. I really feel comfortable in this. I feel a lot, I see a lot of people guiding who I feel like are way less experienced than me. Like, should I be doing this? And just kind of getting this consistent no, like this embodied, like, no,
Right.
like, don't do that. And then I recently kind of discovered why, because through a series of events, ended up going to help facilitate a psychedelic retreat in Colorado just like maybe a month ago. And it was my first time like being like guiding in that kind of way. And I realized that there's something about my being, and this is again, it's like the pantheon of animals, it's like we all have these different gifts and like powers that come out. And I realized that for me, like there's something about the way that I move energetically where I need to be like not facilitating to actually help people. Like there's the lead guide was like orchestrating the whole thing and being like, okay, now we're doing this and now we're going here and now the energy's going like this, which gave me the space to kind of, to do all this like weird energy stuff of like, I'm gonna go outside the building and like walk the whole perimeter of the land like by myself and like sense the field and like do like space gridding and like do all this weird magic. I was like, oh, this is my sweet spot. And and then it was a lot of profound things that happened. And I didn't actually take any medicine during everybody else took mushrooms. And as that was happening, I realized like it was almost too psychedelic for me to be sober in a room full of people tripping. And I was like, oh, because of all this embodiment practice I've been doing and the way I've been approaching the psychedelics, my body has gotten super, super sensitive. And so it will just like click on like from like little doses or like I've learned the lesson the hard way too many times of like, I'm gonna just take a little bit of acid and it'll be fine. And then it's like, nope, now you're like doing shamanic clearing on the whole music festival, and this is work. You know? Yeah, so I made that mistake. But so at this gathering, the head shaman, something opened on the last day after the day after the medicine journey. So everybody's sober. We had just smoked a little bit of ganja, like not very much. Everyone's just laughing, hanging out in the kitchen. It's like very connected because everybody's had these breakthroughs like in the journey. And the lead guide, who I've now developed like a really strong brotherhood with, he starts sharing about a Bufo experience that he had. And which I have not done personally, which I've had many people reflect back to me that they're like, you have the frog medicine, like in you, like you need to do this. And I haven't yet, but I feel it like at some point, like in the future. But he tells me about this Bufo experience, and he's like, uh, he's basically like I fell over the cliff like into the death realm, but I felt like I was going to physically actually die, but my wife and kids were in the next room, So I like aborted it like halfway through and then clawed my way back up, like out of the experience. And the
Wow.
previous day on the medicine trip, he had asked me to do some spontaneous energy work on his body. And I put my hands on his chest and his heart was just like trembling. It was just like really intense, like shaking. And I was like, whoa, like, what is that? And then he's telling me about this Bufo experience the next day. And I'm like, that shaking that I felt in your heart, is that connected to this? And he was like, yeah, my heart has been shaking like that for 3 years without stopping since this experience happened. He's like, I haven't been able to rest for 3 years, basically. I was like, whoa, okay. And then something starts happening and like my heart field starts to open and then his heart field starts to open. And I'm like, there's something we have, this capacity we all have as human beings. So that when we listen empathetically to somebody else and we don't have any judgment and we let go of our own biases and we let go of like gossip or sharing about it, it can transmute the other person's karma. Like it can actually like dissolve the blockage in the other person's system just by listening. And I share this with him and I'm like, I can feel this starting to happen. And he's like, maybe we'll do a session on this like after the retreat. And I'm like, it's just happening like right now. Like like we're going into it. And he's like, okay. And then this vortex opens, and this is just like a little bit of ganja, and like both of us just plunge completely down like into the Bufo experience. Like we go back like 3 years like into the experience, and we just go fully into it. And he's like, I gotta get on the ground, and he goes on the floor. Everybody's laughing and talking. We're just in the middle of the kitchen, no ceremony, no sage, and he's just like drops into like a full cathartic death process. And he's just like convulsing on the ground and just like contorting, like going fully back into it. And I realized as it started to happen, like my being was able to hold him through it, and that my energy body was able to descend like underneath him and actually lower him gently down like into the death realm because I've traversed that myself. And I'll share about this more in the other podcast, but because I have like taken myself like fully through into like total obliteration and like down into the darkest realms and like penetrated through and found like reconnected with the God light, like gone through the basement and then it like opened back up to the sky. Like there was like a gravity. I could tell there was like, oh, there's some sort of like substance in me that's able to hold you through this because of what I've cultivated, like in my own space. That's not a skill. And then he said to me afterwards, he was like, my teacher's teacher, the master shaman, like couldn't clear this. And I was like, oh, because it's not a skill. It's like there's like a density, like a gravity that got cultivated in me because of my experiences that then was able to come out in this context and like get revealed. And so I share all that because as you're describing the tour of love and your DMT experiences, I'm like, what I feel in that is like there's these bits of knowledge that you've been talking about of like, oh, there's a lesson, and it's like, oh, remember this. But what I feel more than that is like hundreds of trips, like all these times that you've been doing, like what I sense in you is it's like some higher dimensional energy that's like imprinted into your soul that you maybe that has no words, that it's just like an energetic quality that has been being refined and refined and refined over these decades. And now that vibration will just emanate out of you. And so other people may not understand any of that or like be able to like know that like where that came from, but like they'll feel it when you know, do your whole bit and it will come out through those things. So yeah, very cool. That
I've,
was my
I've, I appreciate you sharing that. I've traveled to sacred sites all over the world, and people have. I used to go down to Pyramid of the Sun in Mexico City every few months. Did DMT there. Got a entrance into the pyramid itself one day
wow.
and sat in there and did DMT
Oh,
and cried for an hour and a half. And
wow.
I wasn't even uncomfortable, but it was like, wow, this site is crying through me. But one of the things I've always felt, people have said you're receiving what you need to receive there. And I said, part of it is that it's this loop of activation of
Mm,
whatever I carry, and we all carry codes, so to
mhm,
speak, for lack of a better word.
mm,
Um, that is actually activating those sites and I'm then being this full circle that just loop that happens.
Wow.
But
Full
it's
body
it's
goosebumps.
fascinating. We're here for something. I said it all along. I got the full ride ticket here. Let's do
Yeah.
this. And when I didn't die from my back-to-back strokes, I'm like, hey, I guess I still got work to do here. Let's get to it.
Maybe the strokes actually opened something deeper. Who knows?
I'm sure they did something. There's no doubt
Yeah.
about it. Um,
Wow.
Michael, I want to thank you for being on the DMT Chronicles. You are a gift. When we first really connected in Ventura, when you were doing the documentary Cosmic Giggle,
Mm,
there was a connection with you that was very powerful for me,
mm.
and a deep appreciation that was established. And now, in this interview and our subsequent interview on psychedelics as medicine, I feel like we've come full circle. I think the next thing is for us to be in person and maybe
Yes.
do some exploring together. And I'm looking forward to that also. But so much love and respect to you, and thank you for being our guest today.
Thank you so much. I so appreciate hearing all that. Yeah, it really warms my heart, like feeling that in our arc, and I feel the same. Yeah, it's been a real pleasure talking about all this.
Many blessings to you.
Thanks.